Nice. Hi, everyone. It's Zainab again, Cohort 5 Fellow with HTF. We are now on our fourth installment with HTF Live-ish, and this time I have with me Victor Pereira. Victor is our methods teacher in science, or it's more formally known as our master teacher in residence in science. In addition to HTF, he's worked very extensively with teacher education programs and focused a lot on teacher preparation and mentorship. And he's helping fellows transition, for example, from being excellent science students to excellent science teachers. This is what I read online, and I'm really excited to talk more about this. Hi, Victor. Thanks so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. I'm excited.
We are so excited to have you. I'm just going to jump straight into questions. Our first question for you is, why did you choose to join HTF as a faculty member? What drew you and still draws you to the program?
Great. This was a very exciting program for many different reasons, but let me just maybe start off with a little bit of background. So I was teaching in Boston Public Schools for 14 years, and 11 of those years I was working with the teacher education program at Harvard Graduate School of Education, and 10 of those years as adjunct science methods instructor. And so I really enjoyed working with pre-service teachers, and in a lot of ways, it was my best professional development. It was an opportunity to learn from different perspectives and ultimately try things that I had read about and prepared for classes. And it was Dr. Marceth, as the HTF program was getting ready to launch, that put this opportunity across my desk. And I was really drawn to the teacher residency model, I think the most out of the HTF program structure. I think truly new teachers learn best from teaching in their classrooms and from their students. I often joke saying that, you guys hopefully will learn a lot from me as your instructor, but it's going to be your students that are going to be the best teachers and help you prepare to be a better teacher year after year. And so that model, a teacher residency model, obviously in a supported way, in a structured way, is an opportunity to really merge the instruction and the teaching that happens in the classroom and make sense of the fieldwork experience. And at that point in my career, after 14 years of teaching in high school science, high school biology mostly, I really appreciated that professional development opportunity. And I also was looking for, is there a way to grow my impact? Having 120 students every year, now the potential, what I call my grand students and my students is slightly greater. So that's exciting as well. And going back as a professional development, I've met so many colleagues. I think as an educator, I've grown so much in the last 5 years because of the colleagues that I've worked with, specifically at HTF, but also at GSC.
It seems like a really phenomenal community at Hugsy and within HTF specifically. That's really cool to hear.
Yeah, just to add to that point, HTF specifically, there was a lot of collaboration. Granted, at the beginning it was really designing this program and launching it that first year, so it was definitely intense. But unlike a lot of other programs, I guess from my point of view, or even being adjunct, I didn't see educators working as closely together. So I really appreciated the opportunity to work closely with the HTF team. Really like a family. It's been great.
Wow, that's really neat. You guys seem like a family to us from afar, so it's good to hear that that's how it is.
Great.
Moving a bit into your background in science teaching, we're just trying to focus a bit more on what the content areas are all about. And I know it's hard to dilute, but what is teaching science all about for you?
How long do I have to answer this question? So I guess I start with, we are all born scientists. We are all born curious, asking questions, conducting investigations. And I know that phrase sounds very formal, like, are we mixing things? But yeah, we made our potions in the kitchen. We were looking under rocks, in the backyard, or whatever it may be, whatever our context was. We were trying to make sense of the natural world, collecting data, learning. And at some point, there was the Great Divorce. Not C.S. Lewis' Great Divorce, but like
Mm.
great divorce from this love of science. Content, vocabulary, grades, tests, some of these things
Mm.
started to get, again, not for all of us, but start to get in the way of that love of science. In many ways, the way science is taught in the classroom,
Mm.
you know, ended up presenting a barrier for a lot of us. So,
Mm.
in a lot of ways, I'm really thinking about science as an opportunity to reignite that love and passion for, our curiosity. Really thinking about how science impacts us, but also how we, through science, can impact our own society. Make a better world. Learn from others.
Mm.
So, generally, I think of the purpose of science education is to increase science literacy in our communities and in our society.
Mhm.
Uh, Folks that are making informed decisions, folks that are learning from diverse perspectives. Specifically in the classroom, when I'm telling my new teachers is the purpose of science education is really to parallel with the nature of science, how we do science, how we learn from science, and in getting students to see that science as a
Mm.
subject goes beyond the traditional four walls of a classroom. I don't want students thinking about, I don't want my grand students thinking about science as sitting down in 10th grade biology at a desk. I
Right.
want them thinking about, oh, how does this, impact me? What are my interests? Um, so I think the important piece, developing science literacy for all is really thinking about opportunities that are relevant to our students and
Mm.
authentic. Do they see how
Mhm.
their engagement with science can actually impact the real world, depending on their families, their communities, and beyond.
I think I hadn't heard of the phrase science literacy before, and that's a helpful, layout of what it is as like how it actually fits into my life. Not do I just know the terms, for example, which is what I think of when I hear literacy. Hmm.
Yeah, one other piece is just even thinking about, and I don't want to make it sound like, the first time a teacher introduces photosynthesis, they're doing bad science teaching. There's
Mhm.
a level of vocabulary that's necessary for us to communicate science.
Right.
It's just when we focus, entirely on the content and, take away the skills, we're not seeing those connections. It's more of a larger whole picture, thinking about how to do it, but also the information that we already have as a foundation to continue.
Mhm.
So in a lot of ways, the science literacy is also thinking about how we do science.
Right. Got it. So thinking a bit about that general thing that you just said about like it's not just the content, but also how we go about it, as an approach to teaching. How do you think this is transitioning a little bit, but how do you think, the COVID-19 pandemic is affecting education and like how you approach, that sort of learning over a digital medium?
Yes. So this current situation, this transition to virtual learning has presented a lot of challenges to a lot of stakeholders. So I think, off the top of my head, three primary stakeholders here in this situation. We have the students, the teachers, and we have families.
Mm-hmm.
Really just thinking about what the roles and responsibilities are or were at the beginning of this, and that wasn't clear. I think that was the biggest challenges,
Mm-hmm.
uh, coming up with structures and systems to support all learners, um, all stakeholders as well, and really through what are the roles and responsibilities, and even the expectations of how we're supposed to teach and how we're supposed to learn in this
Mm-hmm.
new virtual space. So in addition to like the challenges on the stakeholders, I think there were a lot of also, in additional challenges in terms of tech literacy. I think we're really working off the assumption that students, or actually all stakeholders, know how to use computers and
Mm-hmm.
technology and certain apps, where maybe so, but do they, does that skill translate to the virtual teaching and learning space? Like,
Mm-hmm.
are people able to very easily conduct business using these tools in this new sort of experience or context?
Mm-hmm.
um, and even the idea of how do the things that we do well in the classroom. So imagine as an example, imagine an experienced educator who really, you know, has a safe, engaging class.
Mm-hmm.
This educator might not necessarily know how to translate, you know, those skills online. You know, whether
Right.
it's, here's my biggest challenge, talking to some of my pre-service teachers. All right, great. Circulating with intent. Okay, so now you have, you know, 5 or 6 small groups working in your classroom, and you can poke around and you can kind of get a sense of what they're doing, collect data, you know, plan for the debrief, and all of these skills that, you know, experienced educators can do well in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
What's the tool, what's the system to do that virtually? So I think the translation, you know, of some of these skills was very challenging. But that being said, I also think this new virtual teaching and learning situation has presented a lot of forced opportunities. So a few things that I'm thinking about is that we're constrained in a lot of ways to how we can interact with students during a school day. Whether it's office hours, extra help, one-on-one conversations, whatever it may be. Now that we're learning new ways to communicate and engage with students and families,
Mm-hmm.
I think this is another forced opportunity, is that that relationship is a little bit tighter now between teachers and families. But, you know, exploring, you know, how to use Zoom for 15 minutes to check in with students, elementary school teachers hearing, you know, students read, to, you know, get a little bit clearer feedback, you know, to students in that personalized time. So again, many challenges, but I also think some forced learning opportunities. You know, I'm pleased for my methods class in the spring, working with cohort 4 science teachers, we paused some of the topics that we were normally going to go through to react to the virtual, you know, challenges and needs. And one of the things is they had an opportunity to share their current best practices, things that have been really working. And I have science teachers, you know, using their homes, or students asking students to use their homes to do some science investigations. I have other folks that have, you know, structured office hours where they're meeting one-on-one with students, or even, you know, a mix of social time and some academic time. So it's been really great to see that there were learning opportunities that there's no way we would have discussed unless we were forced to in the current situation.
Right, like unfathomable that you get to see your students' home in the background and they see yours, and you're able to interact with your own environment and learn from it. That's forced learning opportunities. That's a good phrase.
Yeah, and I'm hoping in a lot of ways we're thinking about not abandoning these practices, but really thinking about how they incorporate into, you know, what we would normally do once we're back in, you know, the physical schools. But who knows, right? We're also hanging in the air thinking about how do schools start in the fall. And I think, you know, an additional challenge to consider is, in a lot of ways, the transition to virtual was built on some of the relationships that had already been established, whether it was Harvard and the spring semester had already started, or schools and they're in the middle of the third quarter. How do you build some of those relationships in a virtual zone at the beginning of the year, meeting students for the first time? That's I think what concerns me the most in terms of the challenges.
Right. It's definitely something on my mind as somebody who'll start teaching next year, but grateful to have other faculty members who are thinking about the question too, and a lot of other support systems.
Absolutely.
I think we have time for one last short question. I'm curious if you just have any like golden HTF moments or just good stories or good memories from the program that you'd be excited to share with prospective applicants and members of our own community too.
Yeah. Thinking about that question, one thing that I immediately reflect to is those opportunities to engage with folks, you know, somewhat structured, you know, academic, but also personal, building relationships, building cohort. And throughout the HTF program, you know, there have been 2 instances where we've had folks over our house for the summer retreat. The first year was more like an April retreat. It was sort of, you know, midpoint, kind of getting ready for different parts of the program. And then, 2 years ago, it was a summer retreat and food and fun. And those are absolutely fond memories of, just working with great people, but also having the time to enjoy each other. And especially in this time of isolation, I'm really looking forward for the next opportunity, either to host folks at our house, or just any type of social interaction.
Anything. Yeah. Oh.
So
I might have caught like a picture or two of those retreats on the Instagram, or there was like some sort of field or grass activity. I'm not sure, but it looked very fun. Yeah.
Hopefully, fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. Yeah. Hopefully.
Summer 2021.
Question mark. Well, the Google Calendar invite is still pending, but yeah.
Great.
Well, thank you so much for talking and for sharing some of your wisdom with us. Yeah, I hope you have a great day. I hope anybody watching has a great day, and catch you guys next time.
Thank you so much. Absolute pleasure.
Thank you. I'm going to stop this recording.